Battleship is a game for 2 players. Each player has a 10 by 10 grid to place their ships. There are 5 different types of ships. The carrier, which is 5 squares long, the battleship, which is 4 squares long, the cruiser and submarine, both of which are 3 squares long, and the destroyer, which is just 2 squares long. Ships can be placed horizontally or vertically, but not diagonally. You can't see where your opponent put their ships. Players take turns picking a square on the opponent's grid to shoot at. After each shot, you only find out if you missed or hit a ship. When you manage to hit all the squares of a ship, your opponent will tell you that their ship has sunk. You don't know where your opponent's ships are, so you might wonder where to start with your first shot. Is there a good strategy, or should you just shoot randomly? Well, there are 100 squares on the grid, and only 17 of them contain a ship. So if you shoot randomly, without even paying attention to whether you hit or miss, on average, you will sink all your opponent's ships after around 95 shots. But your opponent will certainly do it faster, so we need to figure out a strategy. We need to take advantage of the thing that we know after every shot if we hit a ship or missed. In a strategy called Hunt and Target, you start by shooting randomly. When you hit a ship, you know that one of the 4 squares around your hit also contains that ship. After another hit, you already know if the ship is placed horizontally or vertically. Keep shooting until you sink the ship. By using this strategy, you'll on average sink all your opponent's ships in around 66 shots. But we can make it even better. The smallest ship in the game, Destroyer, occupies 2 squares. So that means you don't have to shoot squares right next to each other. You can shoot every other square, like a checkerboard pattern. If you sink the Destroyer, the next smallest ship is 3 squares long. So then you only need to shoot every 3 squares. And once you've sunk all the ships that are 2 or 3 squares long, you can shoot every 4 squares. And if you know that your opponent only has a carrier left, you can shoot every 5 squares. By using this strategy, you will on average sink all your opponent's ships in around 55 shots. But we can create an even better strategy using probability. To make it simpler, let's look at a 5 by 5 grid first. We know that there is a 3 square long submarine somewhere here, and these squares are empty. We want to figure out where to shoot next to have the best chance of hitting it. We start with every square having a probability count of 0. The submarine can be placed here, so we add 1 to these 3 squares. It can be placed 1 square to the right, so we add 1 to these 3 squares. And we go through every possible position that the submarine can be placed in and add 1 to the squares where it can fit. We pick the square with the highest probability and shoot it. If it's a miss, we go through all possible submarine positions again and update our probability map. If it's a hit, we shoot the squares around to sink the ship. If the opponent has more ships, we calculate the probability maps for each ship and add them up. For example, these are the probability maps for Destroyer, Submarine and Carrier. After adding them, our overall probability map looks like this. At the start of the game, when your opponent has all their ships, the probability map looks like this. More red squares mean there is a higher chance of finding a ship there. You begin by shooting somewhere in the middle. After each shot, you update the probability map based on what you've learned. When you hit a ship, you shoot around it to sink it. With this strategy, on average, you will sink all your opponent's ships in only around 46 shots.
Of a game of battleships. And in battleships, the objective is to sink the opponent's ships, but you don't know where they are. So you have to guess. Now, if you were to have no strategy, the probability of you sinking all the ships of your opponent when your opponent has got a strategy, for you to sink their ships before they sink yours is very, very low. Is incredibly low. So here we are in a market that everybody's learning from and exploring and trying to understand. And the probability of success is based on how long you've been in the space. Now, there's a reason why I'm still here and still moving forward, because it's not like I can say tomorrow morning to my entire tech team, stop providing technology for all our clients. You're all fired. Goodbye. So, I just have to keep going through the ecosystem and doing what is ensuring that I'm able to keep my staff paid. So the probability of me leaving this industry is zero, because I don't really know what else to do. So for better or for worse, for people who are like, Sam, you should stop. Stop what? Stop running a technology company and making sure that I'm able to stay ahead of the curve with this ecosystem. Okay, that is not probable at all. Okay, because there are people that count on me. Now, the people who count on me are, on one side, the staff, the employees of my company and group of companies, actually. But my point is, I cannot stop. Even if this year has, as we draw to a close of 2023, my, executive board, they're like, our chairman's gone a little bit batshit crazy. But we're still with him. Because the probability of them doing well without me, as a group, is minimal. It's a symbiotic relationship. Why are you, driving things at the very front? Because you're in a fast-paced, fast-moving industry, and you have to push the boundaries. If you don't push the boundaries, what happens? It means that a scenario where you get overtaken by competitors is an inevitability. Remember, everything has a beginning, middle, and end. Our lives have a beginning, middle, and end. A company has a beginning, middle, and end, right? And for us to continue to extend that, what do? We increase our probability of survival. One of the key factors that increases a company's probability of survival is mergers and acquisitions. Okay, because a large company cannot innovate as quickly and are always taken out by unknown competitors. If I know who's my competition, I would go seek them out and destroy them. Now, destruction comes in the form of a merger or acquisition. Because it's like, hey, you're growing, you're on the trajectory of outgrowing me. So why don't I just buy you out? Or why don't I just merge with you? The reason why businesses go out of, companies go out of business is because they do not have the merger and acquisition ability to acquire known competitors. Because it's always unknown competitors that take them out. So what that means is we need to keep innovating and keep finding unknown competitors and make them known so that we can keep acquiring and grow as a group. That is what increases the probability of a company staying in business. Okay, now, if we look at this space, and what I mean by this space, I mean by the crypto markets, there is barely any mergers and acquisitions. So everything just goes up and eventually goes down. There is no back up again. Why is that so? It's because these companies in the crypto space, they don't have the transparency needed to do mergers and acquisitions. Two opportunities cannot come together. They just can't. Forget it, because they're not transparent. So, for the market to move beyond where it is right now, we need transparency. And I'm not talking about on the blockchain, because on the blockchain, yes, it's all there, but it's all unknown transactions with unknown parties, right? The forensics and the technology is just not there to make all of it known. So that is not transparency. What is transparency is for there to be an ecosystem where everybody can look at each other's data, can look at each other's numbers, can look and then do some maths on those numbers, of course, and then go, hey, you're on the rise. I'm almost done. I'm almost done. I can't continue. So since you're on the rise and I'm almost done, why don't we merge? Why don't we merge so that we give at least a consistent outcome to our community? When mergers and acquisitions happen because of transparency, it means the probability of a company no longer having any value goes to very close to zero. Can you name me the last time a NASDAQ or a New York Stock Exchange company decided to just delist, finish, done? No, they very, very, very rarely happen because they always have the checks and balances needed to have the transparency needed in order to merge with another opportunity, to acquire another business unit, to sell a different story, and to bring on a new batch of shareholders. So as we move into a more transparent future, we will see an ecosystem emerge that will have near zero failure rate. Near zero failure rate. And then, and only then, can we see this ecosystem become institutionalized and brought into the mainstream, and of course attract mainstream capital. Because, you know, I'm fed up of, providing technology and also operating with people who have very little regard for consequences. So as the probability of opportunities and companies because of transparency go to near zero, the result is what? The result is an outcome that is shared. And the result is people actually care about how they want to continue in this market, because they know that this is a market that can consistently help them improve not only their lives, but for the lives of the people around them. So all I'm saying is when an ecosystem becomes truly transparent, the opportunities available and the failure rate goes to near zero, the chances of people doing bad things also go to near zero, because the consequences are there, you know. So, you know, yes, there are a few bad apples, but they're few and far between in the traditional markets. Okay. Did they cause the global financial crisis? Yes. Did they do it legally? Yes. Did they make a lot of money in the process? Yes. And you know what? I think everybody watching on the sideline are just going, well, that's just the game. That's just people playing within the realms of the financial market, the rules of the financial market, and they've taken advantage of those rules. So for us to come into this crypto market, which is highly unregulated, we need to come into this space without emotions. We need to focus on the numbers, and we need to maximize our commercial outcomes by ensuring that we're doing it with people who have the least amount of probability of creating a negative outcome for you. And that is why, you know, it's important for me to just be here and be consistent to ensure that the right message gets across. I know it's so easy to just take a 30-second clip of what I said and then misinterpret it. But that is why it's important for me to make sure that I show the full picture. Okay. The full picture is we all need to work very hard to understand there is nothing that has no risk, but we have to look at the probability. Okay. The probability of things going well versus things going wrong. If the chances of things going well tips beyond 51%, then that is a bet that you can play again and again and again, and the probability will land you in profit. So, yeah, I just want to emphasize and wrap this maths class up by just saying that we all need to just understand nothing is without risk, but there is always a way to make calculated risk so that the probability are stacked in your favor and against, of course, other people. Because it is a zero-sum game. Doing nothing means inflation eats into your savings, but it is a zero-sum game. Doing something means you are taking risk, and you need to make sure that you're having the probability stacked in your favor. That's it. Thank you.
I actually love that. That was great. Thank you, Sam. And it's true. Like if you do nothing, you're going to get nowhere. People that make it are the ones that will take risks. And so, you just got to decide whether you want to be a risk taker or not, and then go for the one that's not as high risk. And that's for us to all work out, right? That's why we're at math class. See you again for the next class in about 5 days or something. And you have a great week, and we'll catch up again soon. See
Okay,
you.
great.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Okay.